Hello. This week we are going to talk about the principle of life is responsive. And in this chapter, you're going to see that there's information that is going to interface back into some of the subjects that were in other chapters. In chapter 7, you learned about the operon and lactose and bacteria. It will talk about that kind of a response, how there is a response, a chemical response. Also in chapter 9, you learned about the Venus flytrap and how it is that the leaves or the teeth of a flytrap will close when the stimulus is present. And then also in that same chapter related was plant hormones and how plants respond related to hormone, again, chemical reaction. And in chapter 10, you learned about the endocrine system and the hormones that actually stimulate all of the systems in the body during the time that you're asleep, when there's a secretion of hormones for the stimulation of certain actions or reactions. You're going to go from talking about, you're going to get information from talking about lactose and bacteria and that kind of chemical reaction to how a sparrow learns to sing. And actually that particular bit of information is going to again be addressed in chapter 12 when we talk about Darwin's finches and the whole idea of being a species being so isolated. How is it that they can be so isolated and still relate and do the same kinds of things that the same species that is present in another larger, vast area responds to things? So this chapter is a little bit of hodgepodge, but I think that if you just recollect some of the things that are on the that you've already learned, also take care to really look at 11 the examples in 11.2. They really are diagramming the whole idea of life is responsive and what kinds of responses occur as a result of communication in the genomes and the information that is stored in our cells. I finished doing your discussion boards the other day, and I thought it was very interesting that some of you really took the hard road and tackled the abortion issue in your discussion. And right now that is so prevalent. It's something that's in our minds and we're thinking about it a great deal. But let me just close with reminding you that as Christians we need to put on the mind of Christ and not be distracted by what's going on around us, in the world around us, and not putting people first. And I know that sounds very hard, but this morning when I was in church, there was a message given in tongues, and the Lord spoke to my heart, and he said, this is the time to worship from deep within your heart, to follow the path of the Word of God and put on the mind of Christ. And then as I was thinking about that and this particular issue, when God creates, if we have the mind of Christ on, if we're working in the worldview with the mind of Christ, we need to realize that when God creates life, it is not our job, our position, our choice to destroy that life. And we may not understand why that life was created or the situations under which that life was created, but we have to recognize that God has a perfect plan. And that person or that life within God's plan could just be another piece of the puzzle for someone else's life, or to complete part of the tapestry. So oftentimes our lives are related to a tapestry that God is creating, and on the back of a tapestry you see all of the different strings that make up the picture. But then when you turn it over, after all the knots have been done correctly and the picture is created, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. So again, just reminding you that we need to keep our eyes on the Word of God. We need to remember the authority of God, and that we need to follow after what His Word tells us is true. And it's not just in our science, but it's in our life, and it's in our world today. There's so many distractions around us today that in order for us to make good, godly decisions, we need to put on that mind of Christ and stay in the Word, so that we know what God is saying. We know what His authority is. Have a great week. If you need anything, email me, call me. I'll be busy reading your virus papers. I started on a couple that were submitted a little early, and they're very good. The discussion board was very good. People really interfaced information that they already knew, or interfaced information that they are seeing, and adapting that information to what we are learning and to how God is showing us this perfect design. So have a great week.